We used to think of a midlife crisis as a temporary phase, a predictable panic somewhere in your 40s. Today, that pervasive, vibrating anxiety has shifted into a baseline, lifelong condition. The modern American experience is framed as a triumph of individual autonomy. We are told we are the architects of our own souls, finally free to design our lives without the heavy weight of ancestral tradition. But this total lack of structure introduces a specific psychological burden. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard famously diagnosed this state as the dizziness of freedom. Kierkegaard explained that when you stand on the edge of a cliff, your anxiety doesn't come from the fear that you might fall. The real terror comes from realizing you have the absolute freedom to throw yourself off. Modern life places us on that cliff every single day. Without a cultural map defining our progress, every hour becomes a high-stakes choice. We are forced into an exhausting cycle of daily self-reinvention, turning our freedom into a paralyzing weight. This exhaustion stems from a vacuum. Our society abandoned specific expectations for what a 30-year-old, 40, or 60-year-old should do, leaving us without age-appropriate milestones. Without those stages, we adopt the only metric left for success: the hyper-successful youth. We find ourselves in the comparison trap, where the only goal is to remain ahead of a curve that never ends. We weigh our complex, messy adult realities against the curated, youthful authenticity of digital influencers. We try to match our internal complexity with their polished 20-something digital presence. This creates a permanent, vibrating sense of being behind. Even if we are achieving real-world sterility, we feel like we're losing a race toward a finish line we can't actually see. Relentless comparison against the standard of perpetual youth guarantees chronic dissatisfaction. It makes the natural process of aging feel like a series of failures instead of achievements. Traditional frameworks like the hero's journey viewed life as a series of necessary symbolic deaths. For the man to be born, the boy, and all his youthful aimlessness, must metaphorically die. Modern culture rejects this transition, preferring the state of the Puer Aeternus, the eternal youth who refuses to commit to the limitations of maturity. We have pathologized the very idea of growing up. We encourage 45-year-olds to dress, speak, and seek the same vibes as 20-year-olds, framing this refusal to age as staying young. This creates a biological glitch. Our physical reality, the gray hair and the need for stability, eventually contradicts our cultural obsession with youth. When our biological hardware and cultural software clash, we experience a deep sense of failure. By treating maturation as a decline rather than a completion, society traps adults in a state of permanent adolescence. We feel guilty for wanting the very things that provide psychological health, stability, and depth. When an entire population tries to stay 20 forever, the macro-sociological consequences are devastating. The mentorship hierarchy collapses. When 50-year-olds compete with 20-year-olds for the same cultural status and coolness, the traditional bond between generations dissolves. This leaves both generations isolated. The young have no elders to look up to for guidance, and the old have no legacy or younger generation to protect and lead. This collapse of the social contract creates a power vacuum that is filled by digital feudalism. Without a structured internal map for adulthood, we become vulnerable to platforms that harvest our attention in exchange for hollow validation. These platforms are designed to target the neural triggers of the adolescent brain: impulsivity, social reactivity, and a desperate need for peer approval. By algorithmically rewarding these traits, these systems keep users tethered to a 15-year-old mindset to more easily monetize their prolonged insecurities. Discarding the stations of life hasn't created a utopia of free individuals. It has created a chaotic ecosystem of isolated, easily exploited permanent teenagers. The historical antidote to this formless anxiety is something the modern world has forgotten: the stations of life. The pre-modern West mapped these stages with precision. The Greek philosopher Solon divided life into 7-year increments, treating each phase as a unique level of development. This concept survived into Shakespeare's era as the 7 ages of man, recognizing every stage of life has its own purpose. In this 5th age, the justice is depicted with a formal beard. seen as an ascent to a new stable authority. These historical stations acted as psychological relief valves. They granted people social permission to stop the frantic striving of youth and become a stable pillar of the community. Confucius identified a nearly identical path to stability in the East, framing the stations of life as a psychological necessity for sanity. His framework, found in Analects 2.4, offers a specific mercy that modern culture lacks, a structured journey of maturation. At age 30, we reach Li, standing firm. This is the anxiety-reducing end of the experimentation phase, where you finally realize you have a concrete place in the world. By 40, you reach Bu Huo, the stage of no doubts. This is moral immunization. You develop an internal compass that makes you indifferent to what the youth think is cool. At 50, you reach Ji Tianming, knowing the mandate. This is the peak of psychological health, where you accept that you are part of a larger, meaningful cosmic or social order. This framework tells us that growing up is a virtue. Maturity is not the tragic end of life, but the beginning of its true purpose. The most radical, truly independent act you can take today is to step back from the cliff of infinite choice. When we accept our station, the dizziness of freedom vanishes. We are no longer standing on a cliff. We are walking